in tomorrow's marketplace. So won't that be good to know? Ryan has interviewed hundreds of millennials to better understand their career goals and their expectations. He helped a Fortune 10 company revise its brand strategy to acquire the next generation of leaders. He's the author of a book that empowers people to capitalise on their unique skills of millennials. Ryan previously worked as a sales professional in the technology industry. He holds degrees in marketing and entrepreneurship and is a member of Peachtree Toastmasters in Atlanta. It's great to have a Toastmaster speaking to us. Today, Ryan will share tactics for meaningful communication across all generations. So please join me in welcoming advanced communicator Ryan Jenkins.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it. Thanks so much, Mike. Fellow Toastmasters, how we doing? Good? All right, we need it one more time. You know the other session's going on right there, so 206 needs to represent. So one more time. How we doing? Great, great, great. Thank you, Mike, for that wonderful introduction. Yes, my name is Ryan. Today we're going to be talking about next generation communications, and I'm really, really excited. But a couple housekeeping things before we get started. One, I got to get a shout out to my hometown club in Atlanta, Georgia, USA, the Peachtree Club. I'm biased, but best club ever. If you're in a tweeting mood, you guys know the handle. We've been using it all convention. Feel free to use that. Not sure if we'll have time for questions on the back end, so feel free to tweet me any questions that you have at any point. Tweet them to me, and I'd love to see you in the Twitter sphere after the presentation. And then finally, you can go to ryanislive.com. Again, that is ryanislive.com. Put it up big for everyone to see. And this is where you can actually get all of today's slides. You can get it right there at that URL. So good deal, right? So I saw everyone was trying to take photos and video in the last session. You don't have to do that unless you just really want to. So you'll have those. Those will be up for the remainder of the convention. And if you don't have your laptop or any device with you, just write that down because that'll be available. Okay, because we're talking about next generation communication, right? So we've got to use mobile technology and be innovative, right? So great. So with all that behind us, let's dig in. Have you ever been waist deep in the ocean and you're enjoying it, you're on vacation, you're having a good time, and then all of a sudden just wham, you just get clobbered by an unassuming wave. And then what happens, right? You're trying to get your breath, you're trying to find your feet, and then just when you get set, wham, you get hit by another wave. Repeat. Trying to catch your breath, trying to find your feet, wham. You get the picture, right? Rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. And everyone on the shore is having a jolly good time at your inconvenient situation. Just the human wash machine, right? So put your hands up, how many of you have actually experienced this Mother Nature beating before? Yes, my hand's up, I've been there. So another question, how many of you experienced the same disoriented thrashing, but it's come in the form of technology or social media? Right? Yes, well, my hand's up too. Right? It's just like tweets, posts, Tumblr, StumbleUpon, emails, updates, upgrades. It's just like, really? Can we get a breather here? Right? So you're probably feeling like me, and you probably feel like this. and a lot of us, we feel just overwhelmed, probably before our feet even hit the ground in the bed in the morning, out of bed, right? And the frequency of change that we're experiencing in today's culture is unparalleled. And it's a frightening reality when we're getting thrashed around like that, but it's certainly reality. And it can be really frightening if we're not prepared like that wave. So today, I want to help you catch your breath. I want to help you to help kind of find your footing so we can look out and you can start seeing some of those oncoming waves. Because I truly, truly believe we live in one of the most exhilarating, rewarding, and exciting times if we know how to harness those trends and if we're aware of what's coming. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Fair enough? Cool? All right, cool, great. All right, so here's today's goal. Increase your influence with advanced communication skills that transcend generations. I believe generations is a key to kind of unlocking what some of the next trends that are coming. And a couple things I want to make before we move on from this slide is one, you guys are all Toastmasters. I don't need to overemphasize the power and criticalness of communication. I mean, communication often goes hand in hand with leadership. But today, I don't want to talk at you, because that doesn't serve anybody. If I just tell you things you already knew, what's the purpose? So I want to talk a little bit more up here. I want to stretch you a little bit. And I love the quote from Oliver Holmes, who said, "A mind once stretched never regains its original dimensions." So that's the goal today. I just want to stretch you a little bit. So there might be some new terms and new ideas and new concepts. You might be feeling overwhelmed again, but that's okay. You're just absorbing it. And again, you'll have the slides so you can go back and digest. And then the last thing I want to say on this is don't listen to what I say. What, Ryan? Yeah. No, you heard me. Don't listen to what I say. Listen to what you hear. Okay? It's very important. Listen to what you hear, because we're all different generations. We're all in different situations. We're all in different industries. I think there's 100 countries represented at this convention. Amazing. So this doesn't all fit neatly in a box for every one of you. So just, if something resonates with you, focus in on that, hyper-focus on that. So I think that's important today. All right, so let's dive in. So everyone needs to whip out their mobile device. I don't care if you have a flip phone. Don't raise your hand. Don't raise your hand. You can use any device on this. And I want to know, this is a live poll, what is your generation? So hopefully you can see that okay, but when you're getting ready for your text, in the to form, normally where you put a contact, you want to just put the number 22333. That's right up here. If I can work this.
Gotta say that again for us.
What's that?
Say that again.
Yeah, so right up here, you'll see text 22333. And then next to the generation that you belong to, and you'll see the years of when you were born after each one of these, in the text box, put one of these red numbers. So again, text 222333, and then one of these red numbers that correlates with your generation. And those of you that are in a tweeting mood, you can do @poll and then tweet whichever of the red codes. Well done. The boomers came right out of the gate the fastest. It's usually the millennials. What's up?
My phone was off.
Oh, the phone was off. Whose phone's ever off? Come on.
I was being polite.
Okay, I mean, this is great exercise. One, because I want to know the demographics so I can cater this talk to. Two, it helps you guys kind of figure out who's in the room. And it's just obviously just a fun tool. So you guys are Toastmasters. You're going to love this. This tool is called polleverywhere.com. Polleverywhere.com. It's a free tool that you can create your own live polls like this. So check it out. In your next talk, throw this in there. You'll be the next generation communicator for your club. All right, so a majority of boomers, which I expected, and got some Gen X builders representing. Love it. Well, very cool. Well, so keep your phones out. We've got a couple more of these polls coming up. 4 is the number of different generations in the workplace today, and that's the first time in history. And if you're looking at from a marketplace, there's 5 generations, which is also the first time. So these next couple slides, I want to create the context and frame this issue of miscommunication across generations. But we're entering non-charted territory with these different generations. All right, poll number 2. Get ready. How many different generations do you interact with on a daily basis? So again, you're texting to the same number, 22333, and now these are new red numbers, so put next to the answer that best correlates with your situation. And when I say interact with on a daily basis, I mean when you wake up, if you go to the gym, are you taking a class, work, who are you going to lunch with, come home, interacting with kids, calling grandparents, going to the store, out to dinner.
Social media accounts?
Social media accounts, absolutely, yep. 3 and 4, absolutely. This is the norm now. People interact constantly with people outside their generations. And as we're going to find, each generation has a unique communication preference and a unique communication style. So for some of us, we're shifting our communication style over 4 different times throughout a day. It's exhausting. So I think I applaud you guys being here. I'm excited you're here because hopefully we can start unpacking some of this stuff to equip you to be better communicators, thus would make you a better leader. All right, very cool. Someone said 1. All right, hey. That's okay. All right, moving on. 80% of U.S. executives find communications across generations to be the most challenging in the workplace. And I know that's a U.S. specific stat, but that is the same trend we're seeing globally. I know we've got a diverse audience here this afternoon. But isn't that eye-opening? I mean, again, we're constantly having to shift our communication styles, and a lot can be lost in translation. So it's important that we continue to unpack this. All right, here's the last poll. So those that haven't participated, get on it. Get on it. All right, so I want to know, what is your preferred way of communicating at work? Not what you primarily use, but what you would prefer to use on a daily basis. Again, texting to that same 2, but the red letters are different. And let me clarify real quick. The other, that could be Skype, video conferencing, Google Plus chat, Snapchat, stuff like that that's kind of a little high-tech than we're going to go do today. All right, very good. I mean, I think this correlates well with the demographic in the room, certainly. But in person is still a great way to communicate. We'll talk a little bit about that later. But for today's purposes, we're talking a little bit more not next generation, so we're going to look a lot about digital leadership and what that looks like. But really interesting. Again, polleverywhere.com. And what's great, too, is you can have people vote anonymously, and then you can capture that data and use it for a paper or some type of research. All righty. So as from that last slide, there was a couple different options on what people prefer to communicate, and it's usually generational based. So some of the older generations, face-to-face is still the primary or preferred way of communicating. But you've got others that are wanting to email or do some kind of electronic communication. And you've got those that want to still have a phone conversation. And then there's those, we won't mention their name, millennials, that text while standing right next to you. Right? What is that about? No, I'm guilty of that. So it's interesting, right? And again, this is the format. This is how we're communicating. We're having to switch and alter, and you might be texting, this person's calling, and a lot is misfiring. So it can be very detrimental and unproductive in the workplace, or even for your Toastmaster clubs. All right, the last stat I got for us, 79% of millennials want to be mobile rather than static when working. So I know this technology is empowering an entire generation to work mobile, right? The internet, our culture is now connected. We can work wherever, really, now. So that's changing how we communicate. That's changing how we lead. So it's important to start understanding some of these trends and figuring out how is that affecting how I communicate. So really interesting there. All right, so here's the agenda. So again, I just wanted to kind of set the stage of the communication gaps that exist today. Then we're going to talk a little bit more, drive a little bit more depth on the millennials, and then talk about the 4 keys to next generation communication. And for each one of those, I'm going to give you a hands-on example, a real-life example to really kind of package it up nice and put a bow on there for you. And then we're going to wrap up with the conclusion. All right, so let's start with the millennials. How many of you have ever experienced this miscommunication? Don't raise your hand. Silly, right? But it took me forever I must have looked at this for 10 minutes before I don't get it. It's funny, right? I mean, even if we're using the same technology, there's miscommunication. Isn't it interesting? And so I get this a lot too. That's not my mom. That was just, just for mom, it wasn't you. Okay. So here's a quick snapshot of the generations. And again, I break it down by age. I think sometimes it's a little bit easier to do that through age. And then the numbers on the right, that's how large the generation was at its peak. And what I really want to emphasize on this slide is that through technology, medicine's advancing, right? Technology is advancing. Our life expectancy back in 1902, does anyone want to take a guess what the life expectancy was? 40, 65. I don't think I heard it. It was 47 was the life expectancy. Now in 2011, what do you think that's now changed to? 78, I heard was close. 80, I heard it over here. 80. 80 is the new life expectancy, well, in 2001 anyway. But they're now expecting that 1 out of 5 people today will live to be over 100 years old. Yes! Some of us are going, yes. Others are going, oh my, really? And what I think is interesting about that statistic, because again, it's only going to continue to prolong, right? But we're at a place now, even the millennials, they're going to be living into a point where they're going to be communicating across 6, 7, maybe even 8 generations. Can you imagine, right? And imagine what the technology looks like at that point. So it's really interesting. So I think some of the strategies that we're going to talk about today could serve you well for decades to come. I really do believe that. So anyway, just kind of setting the stage again there. All right, now I want to give you a little bit more context around the millennials through their favorite medium, which is video. I know you shouldn't have gotten that one. That was, yeah. All right, check this out.
Entitled, The Worst, the me generation. These are some words the media has used to describe millennials, people born between 1982 and 1993. But millennials' narcissistic label is unwarranted. The truth is that 7 out of 10 have participated in volunteer work. 8 out of 10 donated money, goods, or services last year. And more than 8 out of 10 say helping make a positive difference in the world is more important than professional recognition. They're called entitled, but a higher percentage of millennials than older generations agree with the statement, employees should do what their managers tell them, even if they can't see the reason for it. 80 million strong, millennials are the largest, most diverse, most educated generation in American history. Through science, technology, and forward thinking, millennials are reshaping the workforce and have the potential to turn the economy around.
Interesting stats there, and I think you're probably like me. You probably if you read a lot about millennials in the media, most of it's negative. But that's nothing new. I mean, this generation, usually the emerging generation, gets slammed. One of the banners I fly, I'm not going to do that much today, but I think rather than pointing fingers, we need to try to figure out how to leverage a lot of the time. But why I think the millennials are important is because they are a critical mass of early adopters, right? That they are the largest generation on the planet, and they became digital natives. They grew up with the internet. They grew up with, game consoles and handheld devices. So they're some would say tech savvy. I would take it one step further and say they're tech dependent. And so a lot of the technology and the innovation we're seeing is really being thrown in their hands, and it's accelerating the evolution of technology and social media. So it's interesting, I think, again, they're a critical mass of early adopters, so I think that's why it's important. So I like to show that just to kind of give some more context around the millennials. And here's a foolproof way. Some of you might be like, well, how do I know if someone's a millennial without asking their age? This is foolproof. You can use this test. Are you ready? So to know if someone's a millennial, you show them this picture, and you say, do you know who this person is? I think some of you see the train coming, right? So if the person says, oh, yeah, that's the 2-time heavyweight boxing champion, then you know they're not a millennial, because millennials would say, that dude got me through college, right? Because he's the grill salesman. Because they don't know him as the boxer. They know him just as the grill salesman. So use that. It's foolproof, guys. Use that test. It just might be a little weird if you have like a George Foreman picture in your pocket, That might. But you can tell them I said you could do that. Okay. Here's a quick snapshot of the 2013 workplace. Millennials make up 35%, which is a majority already. And a lot of them are with companies that are under 100 because they do want a little bit more entrepreneurship when they work and a little bit more ownership. But what do you think that percentage of millennials in the workplace is going to grow to in 2025? Just shout it out. Someone said 70, 60. Higher than 60. 65 higher? 75, you got it. 75% will be the 2025 workplace. So 3 out of 4 workers globally will be millennials. Now, this is going to be at its peak because that next generation will come up right behind them and erode that really quickly. But that's kind of at its peak. So again, I'm a dork. I think it's interesting to start thinking about what does communication look like in 2025? What kind of technology? What does the workplace look like? Especially when majority of the millennials will be leaders and they'll be tech dependent, and it's interesting to think. All right, so I believe there's 3 burdens that are, or 3 pressures, 3 aspects that are putting pressure on communication today. The first is technology. Right, we looked at that. It's making us mobile. Some of us are texting, some of us are emailing. There's just a lot going on. Social media, I would say, is the other aspect. And then finally, I think the millennials are driving a lot of this change. And, it's funny. We talk about being overwhelmed in the beginning. I showed you that kid with his hands. Ask a 10-year-old if they're overwhelmed with everything going on today. Ask a 10-year-old. What do you think their response would be? They'd look at you like you're crazy, like, what? What do you mean? Why is it overwhelming? Meanwhile, they've got a tablet and a headset playing Xbox, texting, right? They're going, what are you talking about? So what does that look like when they move into the workplace? Or what does that look like when they begin leadership roles? How is it going to evolve? And what's your role in it? How are you going to participate? Okay, so we talked about the millennials. Hopefully that gave you a good picture. Now we're going to dive into the 4 keys. The first is this. That's all you need to know. Oh, there you go, right here, front row. Front row gets it every time. The number 1 key is you got to be flexible. So how many of you believe technology is changing the way we communicate? No brainer, right? So technology is evolving, so I believe that we have to evolve to adapt our communication styles. And yes, we do have to adapt, and even the media pokes fun at how quickly we need to adapt. So check this out.
Look at you guys with your fancy schmancy U-verse high-speed internet. In my day, you couldn't just start streaming 6 ways to Sunday. You get knocked off. And sometimes it took a minute to download a song. That's 60 seconds for crying out loud.
We know how long a minute is.
Sitting, waiting for an album to download? I still have back problems.
You're only 14 and a half. He doesn't have back problems.
You kids have got it too good, if you ask me.
It's funny, right? Some of you have probably seen that commercial. It's just flying in our face. When a 14-and-a-half-year-old can't keep up, what are the rest of us doing? We're in the weeds, right? Yikes. So you got to be flexible. This is the point. All right, so I believe communication is changing in 2 major ways. Number 1 is abundance, a.k.a. frequency. We are communicating more now than we ever have before, whether you really understand or know it or not. Right? Every tweet, every blog post, every sales page you create, your LinkedIn profile, all of that's communicating something, right? And we do that constantly. And what else is interesting is that our response time has declined. You guys notice this? Remember when you used to make a phone call to somebody and maybe expect a phone call back in 2 to 3 days, maybe? Now, when do you expect a phone call if you call somebody? Now? Yeah, I would say a day. That's being generous, but I would say maybe a day. Email, you maybe would wait to hear back from like a week maybe or a couple days. Now when is it? Hours, yeah. I would say generously half a day. Now texting within an hour, Facebook, Snapchat is seconds, instantaneous. So right, our behavior is changing when we're communicating. And at times I'm not sure we quite appreciate it, or we don't really think that we are communicating when it's in digital. So it's interesting to take this to note, because if you're working with a team or you have a diverse team, you need to start appreciating or being aware of what their communication preference or style is. And what is their expectation on response time? I work with a lot of companies that have managers, or have millennials that are sending emails at 2 a.m., right? They're hustling, they're working. Their hours are weird, but they're working. But they're wanting a response from their manager who's at home with their kids, not asleep, right? And so again, that's a challenge. That's a friction. You don't want to diffuse them from working hard, but you need to start setting those expectations. But you can't set those expectations if you don't know what they are. So I think abundance is one of two that's really changing communication. And then the second one is avenues, AKA channels. How we're communicating over what vehicles is changing, whether that be Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram. So I love this one. Raise your hand if today, like this afternoon, if you love email. Raise your hand. Okay. Like you guys love, like you wake up in the morning, you run, you're like, can't wait for email. I can't wait till I get some email. Yeah? You don't get it? Some of you might be pulling my leg on this. Some of you might be pulling. All right, how many of you hate email? You get so much email, you're constantly deleting, and it's just like overwhelming, right? Yeah. I would say the latter, and I would agree with the latter. And I think Groupon kind of soiled this for us because they kept sending us stuff, and you're like, it was cool, then it wasn't. But back in the day, people used to love email so much they would make movies about it. You've Got Mail. Remember that? Right? Tom Hanks. It was like, yes, well, email. What is this thing? It's so cool and great. And you'd get an email and you'd hear like, you've got mail, and you'd be like, yes, someone loves me. Like, oh, yes, email. So if I ask that question again, some of you that loved it, I'm not sure if you're as in love with it as it used to be. Maybe not. But I use that example because things are changing, right? Email was a great tool. It still is a great tool. It'll be around for a while. But Facebook's making a really hard push to eradicate it. So it's interesting some of the shifts, and the avenues are changing, so we just need to be aware of what those are, set expectations with our teams. So there you go. Those are the two aspects that I think communications is really shifting on is abundance and avenues. All right, so the key here, bottom line for flexible, find flex to flourish in our future of flux. Let's say that 10 times fast. Find flex to flourish in our future of flux. Flux is a fancy term for change. So what does it look like to stretch, right? You stretch, you put your arm out and you stretch until it's uncomfortable, right? Until you hold it there for a little bit, and then you become more flexible. Same thing with anything else. Same thing that I'm trying to nudge you guys with communication. You got to get an uncomfortable situation. You got to dive in. You got to pull live. There's going to be another opportunity at the end of this to engage again. So those that haven't, because you think, I don't need to do that, I'm going to nudge you to just play, dig in, be flexible, get uncomfortable, try, and that's going to make you a little bit more flexible and thus make you more of what I believe a better leader. So here's the example I want to use here is GE. GE has now said that for their executive conferences, they're going to deliver everything on an iPad. Everything on an iPad. It's going to be 100% paperless. So they're not asking everybody, hey, do you know how to use an iPad? Or do you want this? They're just going, nope, everything's on an iPad. And GE has said, this is in quotes, it is irresponsible not to use the tools of today. It is irresponsible not to use the tools of today. And I think that's so powerful, especially coming from a big monster company like GE. So I think that's a great example of being flexible. All right, key number 2 is this, clearly. This we're talking about being authentic. How many of you do believe that the more authentic you are, the more authority you have as a communicator? Right? Absolutely. And I think we need more and more leaders with their masks off. Maybe we don't need more and more leaders that wear jeans on stage. Those can probably just go, oh, okay, thank you. Got to be me, right? So authentic. So I think and we're going to dive into this, there's fertile ground now to share more of who you are, to connect with people and kind of set the stage before you ever actually even communicate with somebody. So Mark Zuckerberg, founder of Facebook, had this to say: having two identities for yourself is an example of a lack of integrity. The level of transparency the world has now won't support having two identities for a person. I would say he's spot on. And I think you guys would agree, authenticity, I think the foundation of it's trust. And I think with trust, there's 3 aspects that we need to harness when we are thinking about next generation communication. The first is support. So if you had a book that you were wanting to buy, but you didn't know the author, but there was a foreword by an author that you really loved, where they had testimonies of that book, maybe Dan Pink or John Maxwell or Roger Love, had commented about that book, you'd probably be more apt to buy that book, wouldn't you? I know that happens to me all the time. That's how I explore new authors. So I would ask you that. Who endorses you, right? Who's your endorsement? I think endorsing comes in new forms now. I think it comes in Facebook likes. It comes in shares. It comes in Twitter followers. Heck, your LinkedIn, exactly. Your LinkedIn profile has endorsements, right? People can endorse your skills. I hope you're using that. I really, really hope you're using that. People can also recommend you. But to be able to do that, you've got to go out and recommend somebody else or endorse somebody else, and then hopefully they'll reciprocate. But when you're talking about communication, I think it's really important that people understand that you're trustworthy, and I think that comes with support. So keep that in mind. And then let's see, the next one is serving. So kind of piggybacking off of that last one, if you've got to give before you can take. So if you want endorsements on LinkedIn, you've got to go endorse other people. And you've got to make recommendations for other people before they'll return the favor. But serving, as all great leaders, as we know as Toastmasters, we've got to be selfless leaders. And as soon as you start serving other people, that's when they see you as trustworthy. So I think we all don't trust people when we feel like we're being taken advantage of. So what does your serving look like online? Are you just asking people to share things, or are you just spamming and just pushing stuff out there? Or are you creating dialogue? Are you creating questions that are engaging? So the surveying, I think, takes a different form when we're thinking about next generation communication. And then the final one, which is my favorite, story. Again, as Toastmasters, don't need to tell you the power of stories. They captivate, they fascinate, and people relate to stories. Have you ever thought that your digital presence tells a story? You ever thought that? I do another talk on leadership, and I get so amped up about it because I believe that we now live in a world of complete transparency, and we can create a digital legacy that truly could last forever. So think about being a leader online and showing that to your great grandkids. It's pretty cool, and they could really get to know who you were from that too. That's another talk. But story, we now have through social media and other tools, we can create a story about who we are. And people can go. And you better believe, I know probably a number of you probably checked out my social media and who I was. So hopefully my story was good. Hopefully I had enough out there to kind of give you a taste of who I am, what my personality was like. And I hope that matches now with me on stage. So as a communicator, we have to have those identities line up, right? Remember what Mark Zuckerberg said? We can't have two identities. So leverage the tools of today to create a story that really connects with people before you even communicate with them. All right, so again, harness these three, and I think that'll develop some trust, and that'll make you more of an authentic leader. And bottom line for being authentic, be authentic to earn authority. Be authentic to earn authority. And the example I like to use here, love this example, is H.J. Heinz. Back in the 19th century, people were a little hesitant. They were skeptical of certain canned food products and certain sauces. And they were doing that because the manufacturer facilities were kind of, they weren't very clean and the quality was just not good. But H.J. Heinz was the first company to ever produce a condiment or sauce in a clear bottle. Isn't that fascinating? It was their horseradish sauce. Because they were so confident in the product that they had that they kind of almost urged their customers to look at it, to experience the purity of the product. And Heinz took it one step further, and he would actually invite people to tour their facility, their plant. Because they were so confident with how the cleanliness and the product. 22,000 people would come and tour that plant. So I use this example in authentic because, as leaders, I think brands and leaders moving forward are going to win when people can peek behind the curtain and really experience who they are as a person. So I think if you can leverage that, you'll be on your way to be a next generation communicator. All right, moving on to number 3. Number 3 is context. How many of you believe that you can be a better communicator if you know more about your audience? Right? You can win over people. I spent time in sales for a long time in technology. You got to know more about your customer to effectively sell and connect. So context, absolutely. And how many of you have ever experienced this type of communication? Both sides are going, why aren't they listening? Why aren't they responding? But the key here is context. So each one of these has zero context on what the other one prefers. right? The one with the megaphone is zero context that millennials prefer texting and that form of technology, while millennials have no context around face-to-face or perhaps over the phone. So in this section, we're going to create context around the generations, what each generation prefers and what their communication styles look like. So we're going to take the 4 generations that are in the workplace, builders, boomers, Gen X, millennials, and their summary for communication. Builders want formal and respectful. Boomers, formal, direct. Gen X, informal, flexible. Millennials, informal, authentic. Their view of communication, well, builders like to use phone. Boomers prefer email. Gen X, email, text. Millennials, text and Facebook. And I think that was represented pretty well when we did the live polling. And then finally, their attitude on it. Builders need background info and details. Boomers want to keep it professional. Gen X need options and 0 meetings. Amen. Gen X, 0 meetings. And millennials want brevity, real-time, and quick responses. So again, you guys can go to ryanislive.com to get these, so you don't have to copy all that down. But what I think is really interesting, what I love studying about generations, is you can almost see, if you stand back, you can see the evolution going on, right? You can kind of see how things are changing. I think Gen X really kind of blazed the trail for us meaning millennials, I'm talking from a millennial perspective. You can see the informal, and they've really pushed the envelope on kind of changing communication. But again, this is key to keep in mind when you're extending yourself over different generations when trying to connect and communicate. All right, so this is a study done by Boston College, and the four points on the left that's the top 4 aspects that millennials would define as career success. So that's meaningful work, high pay, sense of accomplishment, high responsibility. And then you look at the red are non-millennials who manage millennials. So these non-millennials were asked what they thought the millennials defined as career success, and that's their response. So you see, obviously, each one of these, there's almost a 10-plus gap in each one of these graphs. And the interesting one here, I think, is high pay, right? So the moral of this slide is, if we don't have context, if we don't know who we're communicating with, we revert to our preferred communication style. And so that's what the boomers do, right? I would say most of the boomers are the non-millennials managers, but they have a lot of their identities wrapped up in work, and they put a lot of hard work into work, and they see high pay as kind of the definition of career success. So they try to motivate millennials by giving them high pay, and they're kind of missing the boat because really they're looking for meaningful work. So as a leader, make sure you're communicating the right message to the right demographic. All right, so bottom line for context is create context to cultivate connection. Create context to cultivate connection. Love this example, wine library. Has anybody ever shopped at winelibrary.com? You probably will after I tell you the story. Wine Library is just a huge warehouse in New Jersey, and they've got a big online presence. And one of the founders, his name is Gary Vaynerchuk, who's a big social media guru. He's got a social media consulting firm now. He's got a number of New York Times best-selling books. Okay, but Wine Library, so they had a customer that bought a bunch of wine, and they were like, we want to send a thank you to that customer. So instead of sending a note or calling them, they went to Twitter, and they found that customer, and they began looking at what that customer was tweeting. And the customer was saying things like, "Go Chicago Bears, I love the Bears, Jay Cutler, go, oh, we lost one, that's okay, get them next time." And for those not familiar, Chicago Bears is a professional football team here in Chicago. But so they saw that, and what happened? They created context around that customer. So the customer a couple days later is minding their own business. They got all their wine now, and they get a package in the mail. They open up that package. They pull out a framed jersey signed by Jay Cutler. And Wine Library said, "Thanks for shopping with us." See, you guys are going to go shop there now, aren't you? Like, "Where's my signed jersey?" But the important thing here, and then the customer actually wrote back and said, I will never buy wine from anyone else again. I mean, can you imagine how personal that is? So that's the day and age we live in now. Brands and people are putting more information out online. We can go out and create context around our customers or around your team, and you can serve them in a much more niche fashion if you're willing to do that, obviously. So that wraps up context. So the last key is to engage. I think this is my favorite one. Engage. So how many of you would believe that the way we consume content has changed? And so if you believe that, then therefore the way we communicate content has to change, right? I mean, I believe we live now in the stream economy. By that I mean we have our phones and we're streaming content. We're on our Facebook feeds, Twitter feeds, blog feeds, and we're looking for short tidbits. And my generation, we're looking for photos and videos, to be honest. So if you're posting on Facebook to maybe connect with a younger demographic and you have this long post, we're not reading it. So we're consuming content in a new form. Mobile devices, right? If your website isn't mobile ready, that's a problem. So there's these new burdens that are coming on us. So and I love it too, but I hate it in the same fact because for us as Toastmasters and communicators, there is a new accountability on us to communicate, isn't there? I mean, as we all stand here now, I am competing with hundreds of friends, thousands of videos, thousands of friends, videos, and you beating your next top score on Temple Run. That's what I'm competing with right now. I mean, there's more distractions now than there ever has been before. But as communicators, we're competing with this, and I think if we try to deny technology, I think your audience will resent you, especially the younger demographic, because this is part of us now, right? So I think it's important that you, as communicators, we have to get really good at creating really good content that cuts through that clutter, that cuts through the noise of today. And you've got to spend a lot of time massaging that, getting it right. And that's why after each point, I try to summarize mine into a very shareable, very kind of sticky sentence to kind of wrap it up. So there's new accountability on communicators, and I believe it's going to thrust the good ones to the top, which is good for all of us. And for those that can't create content or can't engage, we'll see. But I think it's also important, too, to leverage the technology. Try to pull engagement through the devices, like we're doing with the live polling. Okay, so let's talk through a couple strategies on how you can improve your written communication. You need 3 things. Make it skimmable, scannable, and scrollable. Enough said. Next point. No. I actually took this from Ray Edwards. He's a professional copywriter and author of Writing Riches. But it's true, right? I mean, you guys are probably, there's so much stuff out there to read, and between emails and newsletters and sales pages, there's so much out there. We've got to appreciate that the readers are stressed for time and looking for just the minimal information. So when you write, make your sentences simple, make your paragraphs shorter, scannable, use bullet points, use lists, use bold text at times, subheadings, headings. Your headlines for your email or blog post have to be really stellar now, right, to cut through the clutter. And then scrollable, if people are scrolling too long on your article or newsletter, they're going elsewhere, right? We just don't have the time. So there's new accountability on communicators to create really epic content. So that's the written fashion, the written mode. Spoken, and primarily here I'm talking about presentations. And the 3 there, and I kept with the S, but these are mine. Probably tell. It's kind of shareable, seeable, streamable. So shareable, again, for my examples, trying to cut down the points to a really digestible, easy to remember sentence. So I think the more we can create succinct and digestible content, the better. Seeable, we talked about this already. Visuals are huge right now. I bet the most posts you guys interact with on Facebook are probably pictures, right? And the new thing now is pictures with text on it. So if we have any marketers in the room, if you're using photos with text overlaying it, it's a good thing. You're creating a lot more engagement there. So seeable is huge. So that's, we're looking for that online. It shouldn't change in the presentations. Use visuals as much as you can. And then streamable, I think that's a fancy word for just being, use technology. Props to Toastmasters for streaming a lot of this, all this content. I mean, you got to, right, take a note from GE. It's irresponsible not to use the tools of today. So hopefully those help for the spoken communication. All right, so to wrap up engage, evolve your execution to entice and engage. The way we consume content is changing, therefore the way we communicate content has to evolve. All right, and the example I use here is TED. It's Toastmasters. I'm sure many of you are familiar with TED. It stands for Technology, Entertainment, Design. If you haven't been there, go to TED.com. But it is phenomenal. They've got some of the top thought leaders in the world show up on TED stages, and their talk can't exceed 18 minutes. So again, we're even trying to concise our presentations. But they use a great use of visuals, and then obviously it's online, free to everybody, so it's extremely streamable. All right, so that wraps up our 4 keys. So here they are: be flexible, be authentic, create context, and engage. Does anybody see the acronym that's hidden in there? FACE. FACE, yes, you're right. And so, you know, when we did the poll in the beginning, majority of you still prefer in-person meetings. And I want to use that acronym because I don't want to lose the fact that face-to-face is still so important. And a lot of the talk today is kind of digital and next generation because we've got to know that stuff. But there's still an element, there's still a matter of energy when it's face-to-face, right? We experience this in our Toastmasters clubs every week. And so everyone watching online, tough luck. These guys, the people in the room here, they're feeling this energy, at least I hope. So there's a little different face-to-face. So I always want to incorporate that. I don't want to miss out on that fact, but we also have to face the fact on the other side of the coin that things are changing and we need to stay nimble. All right, so in conclusion, we're wrapping up now. So this is the slide that we began with, and the waves of change are consistent, right? Just like the waves of the ocean, they're consistent. In fact, some of you would probably say change is probably the only constant, right? We've heard that saying all the time. But the funny thing, my friends, is change is no respecter of person. Change isn't going to wait for you to catch your breath and find your feet before it slams you with a wave, right? And so for most of us, I think we're already waist deep in the ocean of life. And the farther we go out in that ocean of life, the waves get taller and the water gets deeper, right? But I feel that the answer to dealing with these waves of change, just like you would deal with a wave in the ocean, is you've got to dive in and thrive through. You've got to dive in and thrive through, because standing still is not a strategy, right? You're just going to get pummeled, and then you're going to find yourself retreating to the shore. And you're going to retreat on yourself, you're going to retreat on your team, you're going to retreat on your dream. So, standing still is not a strategy. I want to encourage you to act to overcome the overwhelming. Act to overcome the overwhelming. And I want to encourage you today, I want to nudge you today to attack change, make a commitment to dive in. The world needs your mission, or needs your passion, rather. The world needs your message, and the world, I believe, needs your skill. So I hope this presentation urged you to be epic, and I hope that it all helps you to thrive on. So thanks, guys. One sec, Mike. One sec. Say another quick thing. Before Mike comes up here real quick, part of learning, and Toastmasters is ongoing, you can connect with me. Let's keep the conversation going. We can go to ryan-jenkins.com. Connect with me on any social network. Message me there. And if you go to ryanislive.com, you can get all the slides today. And then there's one also on ryan-jenkins.com. You can sign up for free for my blog and podcast, and I'll give you weekly next generation insights. So trying to serve you guys on what's next, how do you stay on top of things. And that's the one question I always get after a lot of my presentation is, Ryan, what's the one resource that you use to stay relevant? So as a thank you for you guys being here today, I want to give that to you. But it's going to take a little nudging on you. You got to jump in. You got to dive in. And you can text. This is a different number. You can text 585858 and then type in the word resource in your email, and I will send you what that number one resource is as a thank you. Cool? Thanks so much, guys, and we'll be seeing you around the convention. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Just right there. Just before we go, everybody, Brian has given us a terrific insight, and I think we see all these trends happening, but he's really put it right up in our face, so we can't, ACE, so we can't ignore them. And one particular quote I like from Ryan is, "I love it, but I hate it too."
Right.
So there are great opportunities, but there are challenges for us. I think it's been a terrific presentation. It's made us all think. There's a generosity of Brian in continuing the dialogue. We really appreciate that. And to show our market appreciation to Ryan today, I'd like to present him with a memento of today's presentation.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks so much.
And we would like your feedback on today's session. In the junior ballroom, there are forms to fill out, feedback forms, but after this presentation, you can also do your feedback on the mobile or on the Toastmaster website, just to show how technology savvy we are. Check your program, see what's coming up for the rest of the day. May you have an enjoyable convention for the rest of the day.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Ryan.
it. Congratulations on the new role.
Yes,